I was standing in my kitchen at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, holding a glass of bourbon that had gone warm in my hand, when I heard my wife Rachel giggling like a schoolgirl in the next room. "You know I want you, Greg," she whispered into her phone, thinking I couldn't hear. "Don't worry about David. He's completely harmless." Harmless. The word hit me like a slap across the face. After 18 years of marriage, countless late nights supporting her law career, and raising our daughter Sophie while she climbed the corporate ladder at Henderson and Associates, I had become harmless. A piece of furniture. Background noise in my own life. I set the glass down on the granite counter we'd picked out together 3 years ago during our kitchen renovation. Rachel had insisted on the expensive stone, claiming we needed to invest in our future. Now I wondered if she'd been planning this betrayal even then. The floorboards creaked as I moved closer to the living room doorway. Rachel sat curled up on our leather sofa, her auburn hair falling across her face as she spoke in hushed tones to Greg Morrison, the managing partner at her law firm. "I can't keep pretending much longer," she continued. "David suspects something. He asked why I've been working so many weekends." My jaw clenched. Those weekends when she claimed to be preparing for major cases, when Sophie and I ordered pizza and watched movies alone. The nights she came home smelling like expensive cologne, that wasn't mine. "He's too passive to do anything about it," Rachel said with a laugh. "You know David. He'll probably just sulk and hit the gym harder." That's when something inside me snapped. Not violently, more like a rubber band that had been stretched too far finally breaking with a quiet pop. The David she described, the harmless husband who would meekly accept his wife's affair, passed in that moment. I walked into the living room. Rachel looked up, startled, her phone still pressed to her ear. "Hey, honey," she said, quickly switching to her normal voice. "I was just talking to Greg about the Morrison case." The irony wasn't lost on me. Greg Morrison discussing the Morrison case with my wife at nearly midnight. "Tell Greg I said hello," I replied calmly. Rachel's face went pale. She knew I'd heard everything. "I have to go," she whispered into the phone and hung up. We stared at each other across the room that had once been our sanctuary. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "David, I can explain." "No need," I interrupted. "I heard enough. You want Greg Morrison, and you think I'm too harmless to do anything about it." Tears welled up in her eyes, but they looked more like tears of frustration than remorse. "It's not what you think," she said. "Really? Because what I think is that my wife of 18 years is having an affair with her boss and discussing how pathetic her husband is." Rachel stood up, smoothing down her silk pajamas, the expensive ones I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work," she said. "Greg and I have a connection. We understand each other." "And I don't understand you?" "When was the last time you asked about my cases, my career goals? You're content with your middle management position at the insurance company, but I want more." Her words stung because there was truth in them. I had become complacent, satisfied with our comfortable suburban life while she hungered for power and prestige. "So you decided to sleep with your boss?" "It's not just about closeness, David. Greg sees my potential. He's going to make me a senior partner." "How generous of him." Rachel's tears dried up, replaced by the cold calculation I'd seen her use in depositions. "I want a divorce," she said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Part of me felt relief. The charade was finally over. But a larger part felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure, crystalline anger. "Fine," I said, "but don't expect me to make it easy." "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, and something in my expression made her take a step back. "It means you're about to discover just how harmless I really am." The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Murphy's boxing gym on the south side of town. The place smelled like sweat, leather, and broken dreams. Exactly what I needed. Derek Murphy, the owner and my trainer for the past 5 years, looked up from wrapping a young fighter's hands. "You're early today, Dave, and you look like hell. Rachel's leaving me for her boss." Derek nodded as if he'd been expecting this news. At 62, he'd seen enough of life to know that most stories ended badly. "You want to talk about it or hit something?" "Both." 20 minutes later, I was pounding the heavy bag with a ferocity that surprised even Derek. Each punch carried 18 years of suppressed frustration, every combination a release of the anger I'd been swallowing for months. "She called me harmless," I said between combinations. "That's what they always say," Derek replied, holding the bag steady. "Right before they realize they made a mistake." "I don't think Rachel's going to realize anything. She's already planning her new life with Greg Morrison." "The lawyer? You know him?" Derek's expression darkened. "Morrison represented my ex-wife in our divorce. Cleaned me out pretty good. Real piece of work, that one." I stopped punching. "What do you mean?" "Guy's got a reputation for sleeping with his female clients. Your wife ain't the first. Won't be the last." The information hit me harder than any punch. Rachel thought she was special, that Greg saw something unique in her. In reality, she was just another conquest. "You got 2 choices," Derek continued. "You can let them walk all over you, or you can fight back." "I'm not going to do anything violent, Derek." "Who said anything about violence? There's more than one way to throw a punch." That afternoon, I drove to Henderson and Associates. The law firm occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and intimidation. Rachel's BMW was in the parking garage, parked next to Greg's silver Mercedes. I sat in my Honda Civic, feeling like a peasant outside the castle gates. But peasants sometimes overthrew kings. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Mom says you guys are getting divorced. Is it true?" I stared at the message, realizing Rachel had already started controlling the narrative. Our 16-year-old daughter was hearing about our marriage's end through her mother's filter. I typed back, "We need to talk when you get home from school." "Whatever. I'm staying at Mom's new apartment tonight." New apartment. Rachel had been planning this for longer than I'd realized. At 6 o'clock, the elevator doors opened and Rachel emerged with Greg Morrison. I'd seen him at company parties, tall, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. They were laughing about something, completely absorbed in each other. Rachel looked happier than I'd seen her in years. I got out of my car and walked over to them. "Hello, Greg," I said pleasantly. "I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm David, Rachel's husband." Greg's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly and extended his hand. "David, good to meet you. Rachel's told me so much about you." I shook his hand, squeezing just a little harder than necessary. "I'm sure she has. She mentioned you two have been working very closely together." Rachel shot me a warning look, but I ignored her. "Listen, David," Greg said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. "I know this situation is awkward, but Rachel and I are adults. We have feelings for each other." "How long have you had these feelings?" "David, don't," Rachel warned. 6 months, Greg said confidently. "Maybe longer. These things develop naturally." 6 months, I repeated. "That's interesting, because 6 months ago Rachel told me she was working late on the Patterson merger. Was she working late with you?" Greg's jaw tightened. "I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate you sleeping with my wife, but here we are." "Look, buddy," Greg said, stepping closer. "I get that you're upset, but this is happening whether you like it or not. Rachel deserves someone who can match her ambition." "Someone like you?" "Exactly like me." I nodded thoughtfully. "You know what, Greg? You're absolutely right. Rachel does deserve someone who matches her ambition. Someone who's willing to break up a family to get what he wants. Someone who seduces his employees and calls it love." "That's enough," Rachel snapped. "David, you're embarrassing yourself." Am I? Because I think I'm just getting started. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. What's that? Rachel asked nervously. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, phone records, all very interesting reading. Greg's face went white. You've been spying on us? I've been paying attention. There's a difference. I handed the envelope to Rachel. Consider this my wedding gift to you both. I'm sure the partners at Henderson and Associates will find it fascinating. You wouldn't dare, Greg said. Try me. I turned and walked back to my car, leaving them standing in the parking garage. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror arguing frantically. Derek was right. There was more than one way to throw a punch. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word had spread through Henderson and Associates like wildfire. Rachel had tried calling me 12 times. Her messages ranged from angry, "You had no right to embarrass me like that," to pleading, "Please call me so we can work this out," to threatening, "My lawyer says what you did could be considered harassment." Greg had called twice, both times leaving terse voicemails about discussing this like civilized adults. But the most interesting messages came from people I barely knew, associates at Rachel's firm, neighbors, even Sophie's friends' parents. The story was spreading beyond the law office. My phone rang. Derek's name appeared on the screen. You see the news? He asked. What news? Check Channel 7's website. There's a story about a prominent local attorney involved in a workplace scandal. I pulled up the news site on my laptop. The headline read, Henderson and Associates Managing Partner Under Investigation for Inappropriate Workplace Relationship. The story was brief but damaging. It mentioned Greg by name and described allegations of an ongoing affair with a female partner at the firm. Rachel wasn't named, but anyone at Henderson and Associates would know exactly who they meant. How did this get out? I wondered aloud. Maybe someone at the firm thought the partners should know what their managing partner was up to, Derek suggested. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Rachel standing on my front porch, still in her work clothes from the day before. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. I opened the door. You bastard, she said, pushing past me into the house. Do you have any idea what you've done? I assume you're referring to the news story? Greg's been suspended pending an internal investigation. The partners called an emergency meeting. My career is ruined. That's unfortunate. Rachel stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. I don't know who you are anymore, she said. I'm the same person I've always been. You just never bothered to look closely. The David I married would never have done something so vindictive. The David you married would never have needed to. She sank onto the couch, suddenly looking older than her 42 years. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You and Greg thought you could destroy our family and walk away clean. You were wrong. So this is revenge? This is justice. Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face crumpled. What now? I asked. Sophie. She's seen the news story. Her friends are texting her about it. For the first time since this started, I felt a pang of guilt. Sophie didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of her parents' war. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair, I said. I never meant for it to go this far, Rachel whispered. But it did go this far, and now we all have to live with the consequences. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my best friend Mike's number. I should take this, I told Rachel. Dave, what the hell is going on? Mike asked before I could say hello. Jenny just called me. She heard from her sister that Rachel's been having an affair. Mike and I had been friends since college. He and his wife Jenny were among the few couples Rachel and I still socialized with regularly. It's true, I said. Jesus, man, I'm sorry. Are you okay? I'm fine. Jenny wants to know if you need anything. She's pretty upset about this. Tell her thanks, but I'm handling it. After I hung up, Rachel was staring at me with a strange expression. Mike and Jenny know? Everyone knows, Rachel. That's what happens when you have an affair with your boss and it becomes a news story. They're going to take your side. They're going to take the side of truth. Rachel stood up abruptly. I need to go check on Sophie. Good idea. She paused at the door. This isn't over, David. No, I agreed. It's not. Over the next week, I discovered who my real friends were. Mike and Jenny remained loyal, inviting me to dinner and offering their guest room if I needed space. My co-workers at the insurance company were supportive but kept their distance. Office affairs made everyone uncomfortable. But it was the reaction from our social circle that surprised me most. Tom and Linda Patterson, who we'd known for 8 years, stopped returning my calls. At first, I thought they were just uncomfortable with the situation. Then Mike told me the truth. Tom thinks you handled this wrong, he said over beers at Murphy's gym. He says you should have kept it private, worked things out quietly. Tom's an idiot. Linda's been friends with Rachel since law school. She's convinced Rachel was just going through a midlife crisis, and you pushed her into Greg's arms by being unsupportive. Unsupportive of what? Her affair? I'm just telling you what they're saying. The Pattersons weren't the only ones. Within 2 weeks, our social circle had split into factions. The couples who sided with Rachel painted me as a vindictive husband who'd destroyed his wife's career out of spite. Those who supported me saw Rachel as a cheating spouse who'd gotten what she deserved. But the most painful betrayal came from an unexpected source. I was at Sophie's soccer game on Saturday when I saw Greg Morrison in the stands. He was sitting with Rachel, his arm around her shoulders, playing the role of supportive boyfriend. After the game, Sophie ran over to them instead of coming to me. I watched my daughter hug the man who'd destroyed our family while Rachel looked at me with a mixture of pity and triumph. Dad! Sophie called out, waving me over. Come meet Greg properly. I walked over reluctantly. Greg stood up and extended his hand again, that same confident smile on his face. David, good to see you. I was just telling Sophie about the internship program at Henderson & Associates. Sophie's only 16, I said. It's never too early to start thinking about the future, Greg replied. Rachel tells me Sophie's interested in law. I looked at my daughter, who was gazing at Greg with obvious admiration. He was charming, successful, everything a teenage girl might find impressive in a potential stepfather. That's great, I said through gritted teeth. Greg's taking us to dinner at Romano's, Sophie announced. Romano's was the most expensive restaurant in town, the kind of place Rachel and I only went for anniversaries. Have fun, I said. As I walked back to my car, I heard Greg say loudly enough for me to hear, Don't worry about your father, Sophie. He's going through a difficult time right now. That night, I called Derek. I need to hit something, I said. Gym's closed, but I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. An hour later, I was drenched in sweat, and my knuckles were raw from pounding the heavy bag. Feel better? Derek asked. Not really. You know what your problem is? You're fighting their fight instead of your own. What do you mean? They want you to be the angry ex-husband, the bitter loser who can't accept that his wife moved on. Every time you react the way they expect, you prove their point. So what should I do? Derek smiled grimly. Stop playing defense and start playing offense. The next Monday, I did something I'd never done in 18 years of marriage. I hired a private investigator. Marcus Webb came recommended by Derek, who'd used him during his own messy divorce. Webb was a former police detective, a thin man in his 50s with tired eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen every kind of human betrayal. What exactly are you looking for? He asked in his cluttered office above a bail bondsman. I want to know everything about Greg Morrison, his finances, his history, his other relationships, everything. That's going to cost you. I don't care. Webb studied me carefully. You sure about this? Sometimes it's better not to know. I'm sure. Okay, give me 2 weeks. While Webb did his work, I focused on rebuilding my relationship with Sophie. It wasn't easy. Rachel had clearly been working to turn our daughter against me, painting herself as the victim of my vindictive behavior. "Why did you have to embarrass Mom like that?" Sophie asked during one of our awkward dinners together. "I didn't embarrass her. She embarrassed herself by having an affair. Greg says you could have handled it privately." "Greg says a lot of things. He's really nice, Dad. He cares about Mom." "I'm sure he does." Sophie pushed her food around her plate. "Mom says you're trying to ruin her career because you're jealous of her success." The comment stung because, again, there was a grain of truth in it. I had been jealous of Rachel's success, her confidence, her ability to command respect in a room full of powerful people. "Your mother made choices," I said carefully. "I'm just making sure she faces the consequences of those choices." "That sounds like revenge." Sometimes revenge and justice are the same thing. 2 weeks later, Webb called me back to his office. He had a thick manila folder waiting for me. "Your boy Greg Morrison is quite a piece of work," he said, settling behind his desk. "What did you find?" "Let's start with his finances. He's leveraged to the hilt. Big mortgage, expensive car payments, country club memberships, alimony to 2 ex-wives. The man's living paycheck to paycheck, despite pulling down 300 grand a year." 2 ex-wives? "Both left him for the same reason your wife's about to discover. Morrison has a pattern of seducing female employees and clients. He's been quietly settling harassment claims for years." Webb opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. "This is Morrison with Janet Crawford, a paralegal who worked at Henderson & Associates 3 years ago. She filed a complaint claiming Morrison promised her a promotion in exchange for favors. The firm paid her $50,000 to go away." He showed me another photo. "This is Morrison with Dr. Sarah Chen, a client in a medical malpractice case. She claims Morrison initiated a relationship while representing her, then dropped her case when she tried to end it. Another settlement, another non-disclosure agreement. How many women are we talking about?" "At least 6 that I could find. Probably more." Webb pulled out a final document. "But this is the interesting part. Morrison's been skimming money from client settlements. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger an audit, but it adds up. I estimate he's stolen close to $200,000 over the past 5 years. I stared at the evidence spread across Webb's desk. Greg Morrison wasn't just an adulterer. He was a predator and a thief. "What are you going to do with this?" Webb asked. I thought about Rachel, so proud of her relationship with Greg, convinced he saw something special in her. I thought about Sophie, impressed by Greg's charm and success. I thought about all the people who'd sided with Rachel, who saw me as the villain in this story. "I'm going to destroy him," I said. I decided to start with Tom and Linda Patterson. They'd been among our closest friends before taking Rachel's side, and I wanted them to understand exactly who they were supporting. I called Tom and asked to meet him for lunch. He agreed reluctantly, probably expecting me to apologize for my behavior and beg for their friendship back. We met at a sports bar near his office. Tom looked uncomfortable from the moment he sat down. "Look, Dave," he said before I could speak, "Linda and I don't want to get involved in your divorce drama. I understand, but I think you should know who you're defending." I slid a manila envelope across the table. Tom opened it and found copies of Webb's evidence, the photographs, the settlement agreements, the financial records. Tom's face went pale as he read. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter? The question is, do you still think I should have handled this quietly?" Tom closed the envelope and pushed it back to me. "This doesn't excuse what you did to Rachel." "What I did to Rachel?" "Tom, the man she's sleeping with is a serial predator who's been stealing from his clients. Rachel's not his girlfriend. She's his latest victim. Rachel's a smart woman. She can take care of herself." "Can she? Because from where I sit, It looks like she's about to throw away her career for a man who's going to dump her the moment the heat gets too intense. Tom stood up abruptly. I can't deal with this, Dave. You've become someone I don't recognize. No, Tom. I've become someone you never bothered to know. After Tom left, I sat in the bar and planned my next move. Rachel needed to see this evidence, but I knew she wouldn't listen to me. She'd dismiss it as fabricated revenge material. I needed someone she trusted to show it to her. That someone turned out to be her law school friend, Linda Patterson. I drove to Linda's real estate office that afternoon. She looked surprised and not particularly pleased to see me. David, I don't think we have anything to discuss. We do if you care about Rachel. I showed her the same evidence I'd shown Tom. Linda's reaction was different. She studied each document carefully, asking detailed questions about dates and sources. This is real? She asked finally. Every word. Rachel doesn't know about this? She thinks Greg Morrison is her knight in shining armor. Linda was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photographs of Greg with his other victims. What do you want me to do? She asked. I want you to show this to Rachel. She won't listen to me, but she might listen to you. And if she doesn't, then she'll learn the hard way. Linda agreed to talk to Rachel, but I could tell she was conflicted. Part of her wanted to protect her friend, but another part was angry at being deceived. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, my phone rang at 11 at night. It was Rachel, and she was crying. You bastard, she sobbed. You complete bastard. I take it Linda showed you the evidence. How long have you known? 2 weeks. And you said nothing? Would you have believed me? The line was quiet except for Rachel's muffled sobs. He's been using me, she said finally. Yes. All those promises about making me senior partner, about our future together, it was all lies. Yes. I confronted him tonight. He didn't even try to deny it. He just said I should have known better than to believe him. Despite everything she'd put me through, I felt sorry for Rachel in that moment. She'd sacrificed our marriage for a fantasy, and now the fantasy had crumbled. What are you going to do? I asked. I don't know. The partners are already suspicious about our relationship. If this evidence comes out, it'll destroy the firm's reputation. They'll fire both of us. Maybe you should have thought of that before you started sleeping with your boss. Don't, Rachel snapped, her sadness turning to anger. Don't you dare lecture me. You sat on this information for 2 weeks, watching me make a fool of myself. You made a fool of yourself long before I got involved. I want those documents destroyed. That's not going to happen. David, please. I know I hurt you, but don't destroy my career over this. Your career? What about our marriage? What about Sophie? What about the 18 years I spent supporting your ambitions? I'll do anything. I'll come back. We can go to counseling. Just please don't release those documents. For a moment, I was tempted. The old David, the harmless husband, would have taken her back, would have been grateful for the chance to rebuild their marriage. But that David was gone. It's too late for that, I said. Then what do you want? I thought about Greg Morrison, sitting in the stands at Sophie's soccer game with his arm around my wife. I thought about him telling my daughter not to worry about her father. I thought about him calling me harmless. I want Greg Morrison to pay for what he's done. To you, to me, to all those other women. And if I help you? Then maybe we can discuss the terms of our divorce like civilized adults. There was a long pause. What do you need me to do? Rachel asked. Rachel and I met the next evening at a coffee shop downtown, far from Henderson and Associates and our suburban neighborhood. She looked exhausted, older somehow, as if the past month had aged her years. I can't believe I'm doing this, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. You're doing the right thing. Am I? Or am I just helping my ex-husband destroy the man I thought I loved? Greg Morrison doesn't love you, Rachel. He used you, just like he used all the others. Rachel stared into her coffee cup. The worst part is, I think I knew. Deep down, I knew something wasn't right. But I wanted to believe him so badly. Why? Because he made me feel special, important. With you, I felt like I was just going through the motions. Her words hurt, but I tried not to show it. "So what's the plan?" she asked. I pulled out a small digital recorder. "Greg's going to want to control the damage from this scandal. He'll probably try to pin everything on you, paint you as the seductress who initiated the affair. He already started. He told the partners I pursued him aggressively." "Perfect. That means he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." I slid the recorder across the table. "I want you to meet with him one more time. Get him to admit to the financial irregularities, the pattern of affairs, everything. He'll never confess to that. He will if he thinks you're going to expose him anyway. Offer him a deal. Your silence in exchange for his resignation and a financial settlement for the women he's harmed. And if he refuses? Then we go to the State Bar Association, the district attorney, and every news outlet in the city." Rachel picked up the recorder and turned it over in her hands. "This feels like entrapment. This feels like justice. What happens to me after this? My reputation at the firm is already damaged. That's not my problem anymore." Rachel looked up at me sharply. "You really have changed, haven't you? You changed me. The David I married would never have been this calculating. The Rachel I married would never have cheated on me with her boss." We sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd once loved each other now united only by their desire for revenge. "There's something else," Rachel said finally. "Greg's been pressuring me to give him information about the firm's other partners. Financial records, client lists, personal information he could use as leverage. For what? I think he's planning to leave Henderson and Associates and start his own firm. He wants to take the firm's biggest clients with him." This was better than I'd hoped. Greg Morrison wasn't just a predator and a thief. He was planning to betray his partners as well. "Did you give him the information?" "Some of it, before I knew what he really was." "Do you still have copies?" Rachel nodded. "Good. We'll need those too." 3 days later, Rachel called me with the news that Greg had agreed to meet with her. He'd chosen his penthouse apartment, probably thinking the familiar setting would give him an advantage. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked. "If he finds the recorder—" "He won't, and I'll be waiting outside just in case." "What if this backfires? What if he convinces me to keep quiet?" "He won't." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're not the same woman who fell for his lies. You know what he is now." That evening, I sat in my car outside Greg's apartment building while Rachel went upstairs to confront the man who destroyed our marriage. The recorder was hidden in her purse, and she had a backup device sewn into her jacket lining. An hour passed. Then 2. I was starting to worry when my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Coming down now. Got everything." She emerged from the building 20 minutes later, walking quickly to her car. I followed her to a parking garage several blocks away where we'd agreed to meet. Rachel was shaking as she handed me the recorder. "He confessed to everything," she said. "The affairs, the stolen money, his plan to destroy Henderson and Associates. He's even worse than we thought." "What did you tell him?" "That I needed time to think about his offer to leave the firm together. He believes I'm still under his spell." I played back portions of the recording. Greg's voice was clear, arrogant, completely unaware that he was sealing his own fate. "This is it," I said. "This is enough to destroy him. So what now?" "Now we decide how we want to play this. Quick and clean, or slow and painful." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "I want him to suffer," she said finally. "The way he made me suffer. The way he made you suffer. Then slow and painful it is." I started with the State Bar Association, The recording of Greg's confession, combined with Webb's evidence of financial improprieties and the settlement agreements with his victims, painted a picture of a lawyer who'd violated every ethical standard of his profession. The complaint I filed was thorough and devastating. Within a week, the Bar Association opened a formal investigation into Greg Morrison's conduct. Next, I contacted the district attorney's office. The evidence of client fund theft was clear enough to warrant criminal charges. A prosecutor I'd met through my insurance work agreed to review the case, but the most satisfying part was watching Greg's world crumble in real time. The partners at Henderson and Associates, already suspicious after the initial scandal, moved quickly once they learned about the criminal investigation. Greg was fired immediately and escorted from the building by security. Rachel, despite her role in exposing him, wasn't spared. The partners felt she'd shown poor judgment and damaged the firm's reputation. She was demoted from partner to associate and given a formal reprimand. "They're treating me like a victim and a co-conspirator at the same time," she told me during one of our increasingly frequent conversations. "How does it feel?" "Awful, but also liberating in a strange way. I don't have to pretend anymore." The criminal charges came next. Greg was arrested at his apartment on a Thursday morning, the news cameras capturing his perp walk for the evening broadcast. The image of the once powerful attorney in handcuffs was front-page news in the local paper. But I saved the best for last. Using the client information Rachel had obtained, I contacted each of Greg's previous victims. Most had signed non-disclosure agreements, but those agreements became void once criminal charges were filed. One by one, the women came forward. Janet Crawford, the paralegal. Dr. Sarah Chen, the medical malpractice client. 4 others, each with similar stories of manipulation and abuse. The media picked up the story, and suddenly, Greg Morrison was the face of workplace harassment in our city. His photograph appeared on magazine covers with headlines like, "The Predator in the Three-Piece Suit." The final blow came from an unexpected source: the IRS. Greg's financial crimes had attracted federal attention, and tax evasion charges were added to his growing list of legal problems. I was at Murphy's gym when Derek showed me the newspaper article about Greg's latest indictment. "Looks like your boy's going away for a long time," Derek said. "Good. How do you feel about it?" I considered the question while wrapping my hands for a training session. 6 months ago, I'd been a harmless middle manager whose biggest worry was making the mortgage payment. Now I was the architect of a man's complete destruction. "I feel like I finally threw a punch that mattered," I said. "And your wife?" "Ex-wife. The divorce was finalized last week." "She getting what she deserves too?" I thought about Rachel, struggling to rebuild her career while dealing with the shame of her association with Greg Morrison. She'd lost her partnership, her reputation, and her dreams of legal stardom. "She's getting exactly what she chose," I said. That evening, Sophie came to dinner at my apartment. Our relationship had slowly improved as the truth about Greg Morrison became public. It was hard for a 16-year-old to maintain admiration for a man facing federal charges. "Mom's thinking about leaving Henderson and Associates," Sophie told me over pizza. "Where would she go?" "Maybe start her own practice. She says she needs a fresh start." "That's probably smart." Sophie picked at her food, clearly working up to something. "Dad, I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For taking Mom's side. For believing Greg when he said you were just bitter about the divorce. I should have known you better than that." "You were protecting your mother. There's nothing wrong with that." "But I wasn't fair to you." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We're okay, kiddo. That's all that matters." After Sophie left, I sat in my apartment and reflected on the past 6 months. The harmless husband Rachel had dismissed was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating, less trusting. I wasn't sure if the change was entirely positive, but I knew it was permanent. The man who'd stood in his kitchen listening to his wife plan her betrayal would never exist again. My phone rang. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. "I saw the news about the federal charges," she said. "Karma's a snake. David, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest." "Okay. Did you plan all of this from the beginning? The investigation, the recording, the media attention? Was it all part of some master plan for revenge?" I thought about her question. Had I planned Greg Morrison's destruction from that first night in the kitchen? Or had I simply reacted to events as they unfolded? "I planned to fight back," I said finally. "Everything else just followed naturally. I destroyed our marriage for a man who's going to prison." "Yes, you did. I keep thinking about what you said, that I'd learn the hard way. You were right. I usually am." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" she asked. "I don't know. But I don't hate you anymore, if that's what you're asking." "It's something, I suppose." After we hung up, I poured myself a bourbon and stood at my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Greg Morrison was probably sitting in his lawyer's office, trying to figure out how to avoid spending the next decade in federal prison. The thought made me smile. 6 months ago, Rachel had called me harmless. She'd been wrong about that, but she'd been right about one thing. I had changed. The question was whether the man I'd become was better or worse than the man I'd been. I raised my glass in a toast to my reflection in the window. "To the harmless husband," I said. "May he rest in peace." The next morning brought news that Greg Morrison had attempted suicide in his jail cell. He survived, but the incident made national headlines and added another layer of scandal to his already ruined reputation. I felt no sympathy for him. The man who'd destroyed my family while calling me harmless had finally learned what real power looked like. It had taken 6 months, but I'd thrown the punch that ended the fight, and I'd won by knockout.